So after we purchased the Camaro, I want to thank my mom and I want to thank Wiley, rest in peace, buddy, for going down and helping me to get this car. Both of them saw how depressed I was, how stressed out I was, and they both went down to help me to get this car. And I want to tell them thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for helping me through probably one of the toughest times I've ever had. A lot of people at that time had to deal with me being upset and not being the person that I usually am, which is usually pretty happy and energetic. So when we got the car back to Indiana, when I was driving the car home, I noticed it had this thing where it would go into this mode where it would shut down cylinders and start saving gas. And that was the coolest, I think it's called DOD. That was the coolest thing to me because, man, this thing was getting great gas mileage driving all the way back from Kentucky all the way to Indiana, man. Like I was averaging like 25 to 30 miles to a gallon. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. Now, down the road, I find out DOD is probably not the best thing on cars, but hey, it was doing pretty cool for me on gas mileage. So I really like that part of it. The drive ability of this car is definitely probably one of my favorites. The driving, the infotainment system, the interior. The only disadvantages I can tell you about driving this Camaro home was I figured out my arm has to be like clear up here because the door panels are so high and the windows are like this tall. Now, when people say you can't see anything out of a Camaro, they are 100% correct. The back window is up so high you can't see anything. The little tiny side windows in the backs can't see anything, especially when you put window tint on them. The dash sits up so high, you literally, I'm a tall guy. I mean, at my height, and it's still, the front windshield is maybe like 13 inches tall. Same way with the side windows are maybe like 6 to 8 inches tall. The visibility is probably the only thing I would complain about, but once you get used to it, it's kind of like a Supra and other cars. You get used to it, it's not that bad anymore. So it's not that big of a deal. I mean, to be able to drive a car that's that cool and that nice, definitely gave up for the fact that I had to deal with a little bit of visibility issues. So that wasn't a big deal to me at all. Now, driving the car, it drives great. It was getting good gas mileage at the same time. But when I got home, I noticed some really weird stuff. Let me put it this way. So let me go into detail of what we found when we got home and opened a can of worms that I had no idea existed, because from now on, when I go to buy a car, and I'm gonna tell you guys this, please, please, please look over the whole car, take it somewhere and have it, inspected, because if I would have done this, I would have noticed some things and it probably would have helped me out. Now, these aren't near as bad as other cars, but it's bad and I hate it. And I hate when I get duped by these dealerships and it's getting old. Like I'm tired of like buying cars and there's things being hidden from me, or the visual things that I do see and I ask them to fix it and they refuse to do it, which in my opinion is pretty unprofessional. Let me get into this part. So when we got home, I listened to the exhaust and I loved the way it sounded. Now, on my particular Camaro too, it had the absolute coolest little thing that I had not got on any of my other cars. Even on my premium Mustang, it didn't even have it. It had the, I would call them actuators for the mufflers to be able to turn them up and down to where you could adjust, when you're in sport mode and different modes on the Camaro, you could adjust how loud the exhaust was. But I was wondering why mine didn't work. I'm like, why is mine not working? And I go into the trunk and I open up the trunk and I find the actuators sitting in the trunk. And I'm like, why are the actuators in the trunk? Like, why are they not installed on the valves or any of the, anything to open up the exhaust? I get underneath the car and oh my goodness, I'm gonna show you pictures. It looked like I want to say my daughter could weld better than this, and I welded better than this when I was in high school, and looked like they just took some pipe and just bent it, shoved it underneath my car and welded it. So they cut off my mufflers, cut off the valves, cut off the actuators, cut off all that, and just welded some pipe. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the car did sound good, but it's basically like those valves being open all the time, which isn't a big deal. Like, I like it loud anyways, who cares? But it wasn't extremely loud, not like a Mustang. It sounded very quiet, and then it would get loud when you needed it to get loud, but it wasn't even that loud. It was nowhere near as loud or raspy as a Mustang. It was just, it sounded, I mean, it sounded really, the LT1 does sound really good. I will give the LT1 credit. It sounds awesome with the exhaust the way it is. But little did I know how bad they had chopped up all the mufflers and everything like that. So at that point, I was gonna have to take it to a muffler shop, have all that stuff cut off, have it all redone, have it done properly on a brand new car. I'm like, man, you know, even though it was a 21 and 21, it was still technically used because it had been drove. But to me, it was like, that was my first ever car that was like a car I bought in that year that was that year. So to me, that was the newest car I had ever bought in my life. And I'm like, man, I can't be driving around with people looking underneath my car going, what's all that bubblegum welds all over there? I mean, it looked disgusting. I mean, it was nasty. I did not like the way the tips stuck out from the back of the bumper. I thought that looked kind of ugly. Like, I almost hit my shin on it a couple times, but I loved the tips. I just wish the tips would have went back, you know, just the tip. But I really, really, really liked the car. Where I didn't know anything about it, which is why I'm kind of telling you guys in this video, was I didn't know anything about the LT1 model. So when I got back, the only thing I knew is it had a 10-speed. I knew it was an LT1. That's it. I didn't know a whole lot about the model itself. So when people kept asking me, like, did you buy an SS? And I'm like, oh yeah. Even on my title, which is weird, it was labeled an SS, which I don't know. I mean, that's weird. It was labeled an SS. So title was labeled an SS. So I kept telling everybody it's an SS. And then when people would see it that knew a whole lot about Camaros, they were like, that ain't no SS, that's a base model LT1 model. And I'm like, what the hell, what's an LT1 model? I didn't know that that was an LT1 model. I thought that just because the guy bought that to show it was his engine in there. And people who knew a whole lot about these cars, like, yeah, they brought out the LT1, it's a base model, it's just a base model. But the cool thing about my car is it had SS features. It had the better screen, it had the Bose, it used to have the, you know, the valves on the mufflers, and it had a lot of upgrades. The only thing it didn't have was it had the cloth interior, but it did not have leather. Not a big deal to me. I mean, I don't really care about leather because I look at it as I can put leather. I've done leather in cars for years. I can put leather, or you know, some cars I just put racing seats in them, like in the past few cars. So it wasn't a big deal to me. That stuff can be changed. Now, things that can't be changed, obviously, is exterior color, interior color, you know, things like that you can't change. Now with me on exterior color, I could always wrap the car. That's what we're gonna get into next. So when I bought this vehicle, I really kind of liked the graphite gray. I'm not sure what color it's technically called from GM, but it was very similar to my mom's Canyon in 19, where it looked graphite or silver, but when the sun hit it, it had like a blue in it, which that was the only thing I didn't like about it. I didn't like the blue hue. I wish it would have stayed more like a graphite or gunmetal color. That was the only thing I didn't like about it. But it was a really cool color because of all the metallic flake. It did look really nice. I'm not gonna lie, like it was a really nice looking color, but it was dark and it just wasn't me. And I literally was like, man, I can't handle having a vehicle that's just boring and basic, especially when you go from like a bright orange Mustang or a green Focus or a different colored car. I'm just not used to this boring color. So I went outside, I started to remove all the LT1 badges, the Chevy badges. I don't like the Chevy badges to begin with, they're ugly.
We got them all off just with the fishing line, and now I just got to remove this cord. We're going to take this eraser wheel and eraser wheel the rest of it off. Now it's all gone. We did use some rapid remover to get the excess off after using this. And then gloss clear on top of that. Spray away gloss clear. And everything's removed. Everything's gone. And here's the driver's side before. We're gonna go ahead and remove that. We're gonna start with our fishing line, and we're gonna just work our way up like a piano string, just trying to get all these pieces off. Now we've went through the piano string and cut through this. Now these will come right off. Just take these and set them down here. There we go. We're gonna spray some rapid remover, this on here. Just kind of loosen them up a little bit. This stuff is absolutely amazing. And here's the fender all cleaned off and done. A little before and after. If you do it right, it'll look really nice. Remove the Chevy emblem off this 2021 Camaro. We're gonna try the fishing line first. Hopefully don't have no plugs behind it. That's my hope. We'll see. All right, we got it off. That one's a little tougher to do than most of them, but we're gonna use the rapid remover and start working this shit off, and then use the eraser wheel to get the rest of it off. Here it is, all removed. Looks really good. If you take your time, you can do it right. Looks a lot better now.
I wanted to just get rid of all that stuff. I don't like badges to begin with. I don't like stickers from the dealership. So I took the eraser wheel. We removed everything piece by piece. I wanted it to be as clean and subtle as possible. That was my biggest thing about that car that kind of stood out, was like all the stickers and the emblems. They're just kind of ugly. So we started to remove all those, get it to where it was clean. We cleaned up the paint and made it look really, really, really nice. That is at the point where I thought the car looked really, really, really good. And I did get a lot of compliments on that car for the way it looked. But if anyone knows me, I am not ordinary, and I am never going to be ordinary. And I don't like ordinary cars. I like cars that stick out, and I love to be unique and different. So at this point, I had to make a big, big change on this car.